Gentlemen, I don't know about you guys. Well, I kind of do with Chris because you're wearing a coat. I woke up this morning and my apartment was like 63 degrees. So I had to turn that heat on for the first time this year. It's cold, but you know what that means? It just means it's football weather. And we've got playoffs. It's just in time for the postseason. We're going to break it all down on this edition of Quick Slant from the Daytona Beach News Journal. I'm Chris Vanell. We've got Chris Boyle with us and Zach Allen. Guys, we've got a ton of action here. 6 local teams making the playoffs, and then you have Matanzas in the Florida Invitational Tournament. That's kind of a secondary playoff bracket. Let's start with the number 1 team in the land. Chris, I'm going to turn to you. DeLand is hosting Creekside. They are the number 1 team, DeLand being the number 1 team in all of the FHSAA. What are you looking for in this first round matchup?
Well, the road to the Pitbull Stadium, you got to go through spec first. Not only are they number 1 in 7A, number 1 overall, so they get to host as many playoff games as they are going to be around for until the state championship. So that's important. I mean, obviously they've been great at home. They've been great everywhere. You look at what they've done this season. Their average final score this year, 46.2 in favor of the Bulldogs, 17 in favor of the opponent. So, and this is a good schedule. You have the teams they've beaten already: a defending state champ in Madison County, a Merritt Islet team with a Pittsburgh commit at quarterback, a district champion in New Smyrna Beach, district champion in Mainland, another playoff team in Daytona and Spruce Creek. I mean, they've gone through it. They've played some very good teams locally and further abroad. The running game we've talked about ad nauseum at this point with Tage Moore and Marcellus Carey. I feel like the defense has almost been overlooked as to how much improvement they've made on that side of the ball this year. And that's made the difference in the win column. This is a team that scored a whole bunch last season, but fell just short. Now that they're so complete on both sides of the ball, this is a team with a real chance to make a deep run at this into the state tournament. Creekside, their first opponent, we've seen them over the years. We covered St. Johns County for a while. Sean McIntyre's done a great job up there over the years, getting the most out of Creekside. They've got a couple of players certainly that stand out. Brian Harris, their defensive tackle, who's committed to Oklahoma, is going to be one of the guys that's going to be in charge of trying to slow down that run game. And then they have a running back, kick returner, athlete hybrid named Jackson Earl, who kind of does a little bit of everything for them.
You mentioned the defense for DeLand. They have literally cut their point total that they've allowed in half this year compared to 2024. So just huge improvement. You're right. They have been under discussed. But shout out to you for discussing them right there. Let's go to a team. We knew DeLand was going to get into the playoff bracket as the number 1 team in the state. The biggest surprise locally, if there is such a thing, was Daytona getting in as the number 8 seed. They're going to take on and travel to number 1 Jones. That's an 8-2 squad. But Daytona definitely earned their way in. They're 5-5, and the 2 wins that probably secured their at-large bid came against Vieira in week 2. They won that game 14-6, and then they beat Tavares 15-14. In the second last week of the year. This is a team that kind of pivoted halfway through the year. They went from more of a spread scheme offensively to running the wing tee. And while it hasn't produced huge numbers, they just felt it gave them a better opportunity to get the ball in all of their playmakers' hands. And you've seen a couple of guys thrive in that. You had Aiden Baldwin, the freshman, score a couple of touchdowns in back-to-back games on long runs. You had A.J. Baldwin in the final regular season game against University score 3 touchdowns. Jeremiah Hancock, their quarterback, has made some plays all year long. There's a couple other guys who, they really like. And the defense has shown up, especially in those big games. Like I mentioned, they hold Vieira to 6. They hold Tavares to 14. In the final game of the year, they beat, a 7A school, University, 28-14. Winning their last 2 games, so they finished strong, and they just got in over another local team, Seabreeze, by 1 slot. Seabreeze was the 9th team in that region.
Let me give you a quick rundown on Jones. I was going to say that's closer to my way in Orlando. state championship contender kind of on a year in, year out basis. Darion Coleman, their quarterback, is committed to Miami. Really, really talented player, live arm. I've seen him throw a few times in person. His stats this year: 1,905 yards passing on 76% completions, 21 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And then they've also got a receiver committed in Nebraska, and Larry Miles, who's caught 60 balls for 740 and 8 touchdowns, and really a talented junior edge rusher, Fred Ards, who's got 7 sacks.
Yeah, and they've got playmakers all over the place on both sides of the ball. They've only allowed 87 points total in 10 games this year. So we talk about DeLand only allowing 17. Cut that in half. Jones is only allowing 8.7 points per game. They've got 5 shutouts on the season, including 3 straight. The last time they allowed points was October 10th against Lake Wales, another playoff team who we're going to mention here in a second. So definitely a tough test, but Daytona, they'll be fired up. But it's a playoff appearance, and at some point this year, it probably looked unlikely. Especially after they lost that 1-point game to Seabreeze. So just to be here is definitely another step in the progression and the growth of that program that we've talked about all year long. Zach, we've kept you silent for far too long. We apologize.
It's all right. I'm training to be a monk anyway.
There you go. Father Lopez at Carrollwood Day is the next one we're going to discuss. Another 8 versus 1 seed. What are you looking at here?
Yeah, well, Father Lopez finally has confirmation that they're actually playing Carrollwood Day. I know, Chris Boyle, you said last week that it was basically certain that they were going to play them, and you were right after, the first academy delayed.
Don't pump up my ball knowledge now. I'm last in picks, as you all know by now.
Well, you can tell the future of the FHSAA because that bracket was delayed. Because the first academy was appealing to their postseason ban to potentially get in the playoffs, which wouldn't have had an effect on Father Lopez's seed, or I don't think their matchup. It was just the confirmation of who they were playing, and unfortunately, as the 8 seed, they are getting a buzzsaw. They're playing Carrollwood Day, top 10 in the state of Florida. I think they're 7th in the FHSAA rankings, a powerhouse. They can do it however they want. Passing, they have a 1,700-yard passer in Miles McDonald. They have a 1,600-yard rusher in Cameron Battle, who also has 18 touchdowns and 8.3 yards per carry. They have a 600-yard rusher after him in Antonio Thomas, who also has 10 touchdowns and is nearing 700 yards. So it's a tough matchup for the Green Wave, to say the least. But you guys talked about DeLand's improved defense. Father Lopez has improved. They won 2 games the past 2 seasons combined. They've won 6 this season. They've scored at least 42 4 times this season, and they were a district champion in their 2-team district with Crescent City, who they beat 24-7 to clinch that early in the season. But they're led by Mark Gabbard, whose whole goal with Father Lopez is to turn them into a Carrollwood Day. He came from Centennial. He was an assistant there. And in his first season taking over the program, he has his Father Lopez rolling. So it's definitely an uphill battle, but we'll see how they handle it.
Yeah, first playoff appearance for Father Lopez in 3 years. So another team that, they're pumped to be here for sure. Lake Wales at New Smyrna Beach. Chris, I'll turn back to you. We mentioned Lake Wales a minute ago. They're traveling to New Smyrna Beach, who is hosting a home playoff game for the first time in a long time.
2012, yeah. Back before I started at the News Journal. That's how long we're talking here. I feel like I'm an institution at this point.
Chris, what was your life like in 2012? What was Chris Boyle doing in 2012?
Chris Boyle was selling appliances in 2012. I worked at Sears Outlet in Winter Park. That was in between finishing college and getting the full-time job out here. I was freelancing on the side, but not to bore anybody else with my own personal life and personal experiences anymore. But New Smyrna Beach, yeah, this is a huge moment for that program. We've talked about the strides they made, the 2 big wins at the end of the year, Rockledge and OCP. Those were just gut check kind of wins. Not only to guarantee a playoff spot, but to do so as district champions, to finish the year on a high note, to go into the playoffs with momentum, I think is huge. The run game's obviously been the story with Todd Cutler Jr., 1,314 yards, 12 touchdowns this season. He's also their second leading receiver by 2 yards, 229 yards receiving this season. And they've found something with Jace Payne, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. Mistake-free football is going to get it done there for New Smyrna. So that's been big for them. Lake Wales, just 3 years removed from winning the Suburban State Championship. Was 3S over Mainland down in
Correct,
Fort
yep.
Lauderdale. I was at that game. So they've obviously got a very talented team as well. Cornelius Purdy stands out to me as one of their real weapons offensively. He's got 841 receiving yards with 11 touchdowns this season. And then another player that's really had a breakthrough senior year is Myron Jean, safety for them, who just committed to Tulane last month. 4 interceptions, 8 pass breakups as well. So, obviously we expect Smyrna to try to run it right at Lake Wales. If they do throw it up, they got to try to locate where Gene's at, because he will come find the football.
Zach, what were you doing in 2012?
My power just flickered there. 2012, I was 10 years old. So I was in what, fourth grade at this point, like end of 4th grade at this point. So
I hate it so much.
I was preparing for the Battle of the Books, which I almost got kicked off of because I was trash talking the other team. So we ended up winning. My name's on a plaque in Conway Elementary School in Fredericksburg, Virginia, which I just totally doxed where I'm from, my hometown and everything.
Shout out.
But yeah, that's what I was doing. I was the Battle of the Books champion. So
shout out Conway Elementary.
Chris Boyle and I had a lot different circumstances at that time.
We were at different phases of life, and yet here we are, right in the same spot, same place, same time.
I think my biggest worry was going home and playing Clash of Clans on my Kindle Fire. So
Middleburg at Mainland. I don't know how to transition from that, boys.
Yeah, I left you no room for that. But
this is your prompt. What are you looking for when Middleburg travels to Mainland? Mainland, another team who we thought could have maybe been a number 1 seed in its region, ended up as the number 2. They're playing 7-seeded Middleburg.
Yeah, there was some debate there. I think it was probably the fact that Mainland didn't play 10 games this season that might have been the difference. They're 7-2 anyway. Those 2 losses being to DeLand, the number 1 overall team in the state, which can't really do anything about that, and then a 4-point loss to Spruce Creek, who's also one of the top teams in Florida in their own regard. But Mainland they weren't, at least at the start of the season, known as a offensive powerhouse. But these last 3 weeks to end the season, they've scored 33, 50, and 41. In their last game against Seabreeze, Sebastian Johnson only passed it 7 times, completed 6 of them, so he was 6 for 7 for 205 yards and 3 touchdowns, which was that's easily his most efficient game of the season. Sorry, Chris Boyle. But they're old. They're also a great defensive team. I don't think we give them enough credit there. They've only given up 111 points in 9 games, which is only around 12 points per game. I got their schedule pulled up here. I'm not exactly sure the most points they've given up. I think it was 28 to DeLand, which is one of the lowest point totals.
28 is like allowing like 7 or 14.
I think it's like DeLand's second lowest point total all season. So
correct.
This is a legit defense. They can get it done on the ground, through the air. They have an entire armory of wide receivers, it seems like, that can catch the deep ball, do the short routes, get open, create some extra space. So they're a dangerous team, and Middleburg definitely has their hands full, especially on the road.
I still can't believe you hit a 6-7 in the middle of this. That's unbelievable.
Can I give you a fun fact?
I had
real
to
quick,
do it for
or
views,
maybe a not
Chris.
so fun fact.
What?
Yeah.
6-7 is dictionary.com's word of the year for 2025.
That's not. Is that a word?
It's
That's
numbers.
a phrase, isn't
They're
it?
It's a
numbers.
word now.
We just, as a society, we're at
Can
a
you put
place
that
where
in the
we've
title of the
chosen
podcast?
numbers as the word of the year because of how viral it is on the internet. And that's me, the old man, now shaking his fist at the cloud.
And now we've contributed to it. You have contributed to it by proxy, Chris Boyle, because you're on here with me.
It's all my fault.
It's
Put
okay.
that in Zach's Kindle Fire and smoke it. Boyle. Okay, let's go. You guys are unbelievable today.
We're supposed to talk about football here.
Seminole at Spruce Creek. Yes, Spruce Creek is the home team in this one. Yes, they are the higher seed. But Seminole won this game in the regular season. This is the one local matchup, on the first round slate that already happened earlier this year during the regular season. And Seminole won that game in overtime 16-10. They took the lead with a couple of minutes to go. Then they blocked Spruce Creek's game-winning or go-ahead field goal attempt in the final minute, and then we're the only team to score in overtime. So Spruce Creek knows firsthand how good Seminole is. They finished 5-5, but it's a super tough schedule they played. Other losses, we've talked about Lake Wales. They lost to Lake Mary only by 3, who is the number 2 seed in this district, if I'm not mistaken. They beat Haggerty by 3. Beat Lake Brantley, another team we talked about during the regular season. So definitely a talented Seminole squad. But Spruce Creek's going to come with a chip on their shoulder. And it's a team that, as Zach mentioned, they were ranked in the top 5 in the state when they played Mainland. They're still the number 3 seed in a really tough region. And they're going to be, getting up for this game for sure.
One quick thing about Spruce Creek. Well, most of these teams got the full week off to rest and recuperate and all that. Creek had to play last Tuesday, so their health will certainly be monitoring the fact that they played DeLand and finished a game that they didn't end up on the winning side of at all. So that could, and as Zach is going to allude to.
Well, was I just going to steal your thunder right there?
No, I was kind of kicking it over. I was kicking it over to you. Go ahead.
Okay, well, you mentioned injuries. I don't know their status update on quarterback PJ Miller, who went out with an ankle injury last week against DeLand. So they could be down to Daniel Parenza, their backup QB. We'll see though.
Yeah, and either way, Spruce Creek is probably going to be relying on their defense, and I know that Andy Price was super disappointed in the way they played offense the first time around. They're going to need more than 10 points. Their 2 scores came on a field goal, and then I believe it was a pick 6 or a kick return by Cam Oxendine in that game. I don't have it right in front of me, and shame on me. But yeah, their offense, I believe, only scored 3 points in that game. So that's not going to win you games in the playoffs. But if I was a betting man, I would bet they muster more than 3 this time out. Like I said, one more game to mention. We've got Bartram Trail at Matanzas. That is in the FIT tournament, a new showcase for non-playoff or non-traditional playoff qualifying teams. Matanzas, finishes the year 7-3. They kind of rallied. They won their last 4 games to finish 10th in their region. So they weren't in that top 8 to make the playoffs, but they were just outside of it. They've got plenty of momentum. And their only losses came in late September to Mainland, and they were leading that game at halftime. And then they also lost to Seabreeze, who finished 1 spot out of a playoff berth, like we mentioned. So, we kind of mentioned the hot and cold nature of Matanzas throughout the year, but they've definitely been more hot lately. They put up 41 in their regular season finale against Palm Bay. They had Cole Walker and their all their contingent of wide receivers working. Wiley Connors had some big performances of running back down the stretch. And that defense, their last 4 games, like I said, all wins. They've allowed 13, 6, 0, and 14 points. That's pretty good football, boys. So they're the number 3 seed. Yeah, they're the number 3 seed in their region in this tournament. Bartram Trail is the visitor. That is a Thursday game. So that will actually be played before all the rest of the games we talked about. Gentlemen, that's all I got. Anything else you've got on your minds? Zach, do you want to insert another meme or anything here?
No, just that Penn State's still looking for their first Power 4 win of the season in mid-November.
I didn't know if you're going to finish that with like looking for a head coach or looking for therapy after another loss to a top 5 team, or maybe all of the above.
It's just that game was the realization that the Nittany Lions may be cursed, and it's just something I have to live with now. So,
all right. Well, that's
it is what it is.
We'll end on that note. Guys, thank you so much for this. Again, I said this, I think, last time out. This was fun. So we'll continue these throughout the postseason as teams advance. I anticipate a few of our teams moving on. So we'll be back next week to break it all down. This has been Quick Slant from the Daytona Beach News Journal. I'm Chris Vanell. For Chris Boyle and Zach Allen, we'll see you next time.